Welcome to ENG 308, Study Session 10. Problems confronting research in developing nations. Introduction. In this study session, you will learn about the problems that confront research in developing nations. A number of constraints will be presented and then possible solutions will be delineated. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to identify some of the constraints of research in developing nations, discuss some possible solutions to the problems. Doing research in developing nations. The term developing nations is used to refer to countries within the following regions of the world: Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean. These countries are sometimes referred to as Third World Nations. Salvi, 1952. According to Todaro, 1993, the developing nations are mainly characterized by low levels of living, high rates of population growth, low income per capita, and general economic and technological dependence on first world economies. These inadequacies in developing nations make research a necessity. Its benefits are not only in terms of scientific and technological advancement, but also in the areas of socio-political and economic development. To this end, poor research capacity is inimical to development. When you compare research in developed nations of the world to that of developing nations, you see a wide range of differences. Developed nations are not only technologically advanced, but also socially, politically, and economically stable than the developing ones. These differences have to do with the level of research in these nations of the world. Clearly, there are challenges being faced by developing nations in the area of research development. Below are some of the constraints of research in developing nations. ITQ. Mention some countries that constitute developing nations. ITA. Developing nations are countries that are mainly characterized by low levels of living, high rates of population growth, low income per capita, and general economic and technological dependence. They include India, Jamaica, Uganda, Mali, Haiti. Constraints of research in developing nations. Illiteracy and ignorance. The problem of illiteracy is a serious factor inhibiting research development in most developing nations. Most developing nations of the world have a high level of illiteracy, which makes it difficult for people who cannot read and write to effectively communicate. This also makes information gathering difficult. Ignorance is another factor that affects research, as it makes research participants to be suspicious and therefore reluctant to furnish information that might positively affect their lives. Oshuala, 1987, Ditto 7. ITQ. What the total adult literacy rate in Nigeria? ITA, 51.1%, 2008 to 2012, according to UNICEF. Problems of utilization of research findings. The major aim of research is to obtain knowledge, while it is meant to applied toward the betterment of human life. However, this singular aim has regrettably been defeated, especially in developing countries. Most often, research in developing nations are shelved in the libraries without any meaningful application of their findings to improve the quality of people's lives or to make proper and informed policy formulation and decision making. For instance, the outcome of interesting research in areas such as conflict studies, religion and terrorism, geology, econometrics, food technology, and so on will no doubt be of their significance to the national growth of some of these nations. Oyawale, 2005. Secrecy and corruption. There is also the problem of unnecessary secrecy. It is noticed that even in government ministries, information that otherwise could be for public consumption is considered secret. There is, therefore, difficulty in obtaining vital data from statutory national agency, Oshuala, 1987, Ditto 8. This is not unconnected to the corruption that is hitting deep into the fabrics of most developing nations, where civil servants are given to making public information look secret or difficult to obtain, but on tipping them off, they will provide the researcher with the same information. Poor state of research infrastructure. Research infrastructure such as libraries, laboratories, facilities or funds for field trips, survey and ICT, Ehagure et al. 2006, are generally in very poor state in most developing countries, and this greatly constrains research. Most university libraries are silent graveyards for old and outdated books and reference materials, which serve no current or relevant research purposes. Laboratories are not any different, as necessary chemicals and instruments are either not available in very bad shape. Field trips and surveys are often done at the researcher's expense, as facilities and funds are not provided. In this era of ICT and technological advancement, most developing nations are lagging behind in terms of reliable and stable internet facility. The relative lack of these research infrastructures has constrained research in developing countries of the world. Problem of finance and capital. Many developing nations are poor and as a result could not finance research projects that could lead to major breakthrough. There are limited outlets for research works owing to escalating international standards, high cost of publishing in local and international journals, and poor motivation on the part of government and institutions. International experience is inadequate because of difficulty in accessing funds for conferences, fellowships, staff training, and so on. According to Oshuala, 1987 Ditto 10, there is also the dearth of research centers, workshops, laboratories, and computers. This makes the work of researchers difficult and inconclusive. Besides this is the fact that research consumes time and is usually expensive. For an individual, this is also a challenge. See Ekagure et al. 2006 Ditto 322 to 324. ITQ. What is Nigeria's GDP? ITA. 80.3 trillion. $419 billion. ITA. 80.3 trillion. $490 billion for 2013. Unethical practices. Research in developing nations is hampered by problems of unethical practices. These include corruption and other negative attitudes of researchers, such as negligence and incompetence. According to Ekagure et al. 2006 Ditto 323, young researchers are often fond of the following unethical practices in research: manipulation and falsification of data, reporting experiments that were never done, results that are not reproducible, lack of truth and trustworthiness in research. Possible solutions to research problems in developing nations. Ekagure et al. 2006 Ditto 320 propose the following strategies for sustainable research activities. 1. Building research capacity and synergy through 2. Good and implemented institutional policy on research. 3. Providing the enabling environment for research. 4. Enhancing the scope for intellectual scientific discourse. 5. Making research a feature of various levels of training. 6. Formulating and implementing strategic national research policies. 7. Promoting interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary research collaborations. 8. Making institutional research announcements highlighting selected new developments or directions. 9. Network or collaborative activities involving various partners, industries, other research institutions, and so on. 10. Packaging and dissemination of research products. Study session summary. In this study session, we have discussed the problems confronting research in developing nations, some of which include illiteracy and ignorance, lack adequate funds, poor state of research infrastructures. We noted that these challenges have constrained research in developing nations. We further presented some possible solutions to the problems. We have come to the end of ENG 308 and study session 10. Thanks for listening.